In the 1880s, Vermont State House, which dates back to the 1850s, was cramped and needed more space. And they added on to the back of the building on the west side, thus throwing the building into asymmetry for a Supreme Court chamber and a new state library. In the basement of that annex, they also installed the first indoor plumbing and indoor restrooms for the State House. In other words, up until the 1880s, people were actually using outhouses behind the building. Now, this was built to accommodate a large number of men, men being the only people who were members of the legislature in the 1880s. And here we see magnificent marble stalls, urinals, and a very long bank of porcelain sinks. It's the old men's room. It's down in the basement. Other restrooms have been created in the State House in more recent years, so it isn't used quite with the intensity that it was used in the 19th century, and as a result, we fondly call it Ye Old Men's Room, a place that still is used by men, but is not quite as used as it once was. The State House in recent years has been facing some space issues, and for the fourth time in its history, they're contemplating adding on to the building again. However, spaces like Ye Old Men's Room are decidedly underutilized for what they were used for, and it has been suggested a few times that this old men's room be turned into something more useful. The caucuses of the major political parties in the building use some of the meeting rooms in the building, and we do have one, now two members that are independents in the House who actually use Ye Old Men's Room as their caucus space, only one of the many stalls that are found in this restroom.
Well, this week we got the governor's budget address, so it gives us something to work on, both from the Transportation Committee and the Institutions Committee. This morning in Transportation, we took up bikes and bike paths and bike conditions and so forth, and it was a good, lively discussion. Had a number of advocates from all over the state, really talking about the economic driver of the bicycle industry and how it's really taken off, and what we do different than New Hampshire and Maine and so forth, and what we do better and what we do worse. The main focus at the outset was that we should be focusing on some bike safety issues, both from the rider of the bike in helmets and sharing the road and being courteous to motorists, and vice versa. And I think what we're going to do is try and institute maybe a program within driver ed, so that the drivers will learn to share the road with bicyclists, and vice versa, because they're going to be riding bicycles as well. So that was a good discussion. Again, we're taking up other issues in the Institutions Committee, the State Hospital being a big one, particularly for this area. It's been talked about moving the State Hospital in the future to the Chittenden County area with Fletcher Allen. The proposal has gone from $20 million to $100 million, and we simply just can't afford it. And it seems to me that Waterbury is accepting. They would like to keep the facility there, and I think we can do it for a lot less money if we keep it in that area. But there's some federal requirements that we're going to have to maybe get a waiver on. So we're going to look into that. We're having a joint hearing with Health and Welfare tomorrow, Institutions of Health and Welfare, and also start taking up the capital bill, which is $49.2 million this year. But again, a number of challenges within the bill, and we're really going to have to get creative in that approach. The Bennington State Office Complex, They've found that there's a high prevalence of sarcoidosis, which is a disease that affects the internal organs and respiratory ailments. And we're moving the people out of the complex, 150 people, and but that's getting some attention as well. So we have a number of challenges this week, but we'll get through them. And as we go forward, a number of issues relating to the budget and the capital bill.
This has been an exciting week for those folks that are concerned about getting broadband out to the far corners of the state, and those from Orange County know that there's a lot of dead-end roads, and there are many places out there where we wonder if broadband's going to be available in 20 years, much less in half a dozen. And for those of us who were on an Economic Development Committee last year, working to try and get some investment in broadband that would focus on the last mile and service areas that were out in the boonies, and ran into stonewall after stonewall after stonewall, and were frankly quite disappointed at the response from the governor's office, kind of an unwillingness to tackle this issue. There appears to have been a change of heart, and the commissioner of Department of Public Service and the governor himself are now open to doing some financing that will start to focus on broadband out in the hinterlands, and bring us rural Vermonters along with those that live in the big cities. And it's not going to be overnight, but I think the governors have basically accepted the plan that was floated in economic development last year, and it looks like we may have some positive progress to announce here in the next couple of weeks.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. And the highlight of the week, I think, is the governor's address, the budget address, as it always is. And he called for holding the line on spending roughly a 3% above what we now spend to take it into effect inflationary pressures. So yesterday, on Tuesday, we did have hearing on the Government Operations Committee on the organization of legislative sessions. And we did hear from an official from Maine who heads up the Maine Legislative Council. And we also heard from a former speaker of the New Hampshire House who was a speaker before the new system of organizing in December, and so we had the advantage of seeing how it worked both ways. And I think the sum and substance of the testimony was that I guess there are 8 or 9 states that do have early organization sessions that sort of jumpstart the legislative session. And what's behind all of this is really the preservation of the citizen legislature. Would the citizens of the Vermont benefit from a legislature that hit the ground running in January, or waiting a week or so to find out what their committee assignments are? Many people would contend that if a person in general knows in advance what their assignment is, they're better able to perform their duties. So a constitutional amendment is, as we've discussed before, very difficult. It has a long road ahead, but the proponents of the amendment feel that it's the people of Vermont should know that we are constantly trying to improve the system we now have. And I believe that it is an improvement, and so do all the other sponsors, which would include John Campbell, the Democratic Majority Leader, and Peter Shumlin, who's the President Pro Tem of the Senate. So that's the organization of the Senate. I will say that I've got some very favorable comments from Washington County voters for the Senate Government Operations Committee for voting out the first bill of the session, particularly that bill having to do with energy conservation. And as I said to you last week, if we now have 60 energy coordinators, what if we had 90 energy coordinators or 100? And that would spread the word that oil independence from Mideast oil is really in back of all of this. And if we can wean our way from that dependence, that we'll have a better society and a better national government and a better state government. So it's a small step, but if communities decide that energy conservation is of extreme importance. That will mean that the individuals who live in those communities can also make a contribution and perhaps step up to the plate and help in this common cause. So today we had probably a 3-hour hearing, almost 3-hour hearing on campaign finance, and it was a remarkable hearing, and I hope someday we'll be able to have a transcript because this could work its way into the annals of political science, at least in Vermont. But we did hear from Attorney General Sorrell, who was the first witness, who appeared before the U.S. Supreme Court and presented Vermont's case. And Vermont's case was that campaign spending throughout the nation is out of control and something should be done about it. But the Supreme Court seemed to think that since there was no corruption in Vermont, what was going on in the rest of the country didn't make any difference. Of course, I would differ with that point of view and the court's point of view on that. I mean, we're very proud of the fact that the Attorney General of Vermont did defend the Vermont law as he's required to, and so he took a tough case, lost, but I think he said many times he was very happy. He believed in the case, and I think most people believe in this legislature on a bipartisan basis that campaign spending is out of control. Now, one of the problems of campaign spending, of course, is that you can't keep an individual for spending from whatever they want to spend. So if someone wants to spend $10 million for their own race, how could any average citizen run against somebody like that? And increasingly, we have people of wealth in our society. Those with wealth, personal wealth, can sort of rise to the top regardless of their merit and regardless of the merits of people who are qualified but don't have the kind of money to compete. We brought up the case of Governor Corzine of New Jersey, who said, "I love competition, but I'm starting with $55 million, so it's my own money, and if you want to run against me, no, it's a free country." And then, of course, the mayor of New York was brought up, and most people on either side of the aisle think that the mayorship of New York really was spot by the millions and millions of dollars that he poured into that campaign. So we heard from also the Secretary of State, who asked us to do something because there's virtually no guidance right now for those who will run in 2008. Then we also heard from the Democratic Party, who argued that political parties are very essential in our political system, that he was very proud of the role the Democratic Party had played in this recent election, and that political parties tend to take some of the burden and the money off the back of candidates who do run, particularly when you run a coordinated campaign, as the Democratic Party did. The Progressives' basic message was do public financing of campaigns, but then we heard testimony later that people running for national office, such as Hillary Clinton, are not going to abide by public funding, and nor do I believe that anyone from any party is going to abide by public campaign funding. And even in the state of Vermont, when I've done surveys, people of Vermont are rather cool to the idea of public funding, particularly when we've got tremendous responsibilities for health care and education and corrections and other very, very major issues. Then we heard from the Republican Party, who they brought up some ideas where we might tighten up our present laws, and they did not make a strong case or plea for having campaign spending limits and contributions and so on. Our last witness, Alan Gilbert, American Civil Liberties Union, who sided with who felt that that setting limits was unconstitutional because it was a violation of the First Amendment of freedom of speech. And so there were several questions to Alan, and he said his organization on a national basis believes that, and of course American Civil Liberties Union is designed to protect the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. And so on a freedom of speech basis, he in effect opposed the Vermont finance law. So that's the sum and substance of the report. Thank you for asking, and I look forward to next week, just seeing you next week. And please say to your viewers, because I know there are many, many viewers that listen to this program, that I'd love to hear from them. My home number is 223-2851. If you wish to fax me, it's 828-2424. My cell is 371-7898. And call any time between the hours of 6 a.m. and midnight. Thanks so much.
Thank you. This week was a little bit abbreviated because yesterday afternoon we had the governor's budget address, and now we are working through the proposals he made in that address. Yesterday afternoon we actually had a rather emergency meeting, talked to the Secretary of State's office to discuss the issue that showed up in the press this week about a state website that had Social Security numbers on it. We've been assured that that link has been cut and that you can't access those and that they will be manually removed. So that we've dealt with rather quickly. Today we're going to be hearing from the Attorney General and his Consumer Division, talk about some consumer protection issues that he may have on his mind. Let's see, tomorrow and most of next week we're going to start working on pharmaceutical prices, the cost of prescription drugs. We're going to assess if the measures we've taken in the past few years have been implemented, how they're working. We're going to hear from some national folks on other potential measures that we can take to bring down the cost of prescriptions. We are also going to be hearing more detail now that it's available on the governor's plan for broadband, and we are beginning our work on property taxes. Next week we're going to take up a bill that I've sponsored along with the rest of the delegation that will look at the issue that surfaced about the community skating rinks having to pay property tax that they had not anticipated, and we're going to see if there's something we can do to relieve that situation. And then we're moving into property taxes in the larger scope. So that looks like it for this week.
Yes, good afternoon. Phil Winters, House Ways and Means Committee. Our activity in the past week has been pretty much each year we get a fee bill from different departments, and by statute a fee is supposed to represent a fee, or license is supposed to represent the actual cost of administrating that office, and we try to make fees reflect that. So we've been spending and will spend the rest of the week, I think, on the fee bill, the different sections. Yesterday, Fish and Wildlife was in making their pitch, and we'll continue working along that line. We also continue to talk whenever we have the chance about ed funding. Unfortunately, I think probably that's all we're going to do is talk, but we have to keep trying because it is extremely important to certainly to the people I represent. And I think that kind of sums up what we've done this week. And thank you.
This is Representative Leo Valier from Barrie City. We were just talking earlier about the first 3 weeks here. We've been meeting strictly on Tuesdays and Fridays, and we've been leaving Wednesdays and Thursdays for total committee days until the agenda gets filled up and we can have a full day's business here on the floor. And it seems to be working out pretty good, because until you get all your bills worked up in committee and you have all your information, you really don't have much to present on the floor. But however, Tuesdays and Fridays now are becoming busier, so I wouldn't be surprised in a couple of weeks that the Speaker will be having us meet every day. Now, I miss meeting every day at the Assembly because That's when you realize that you're not part of a small group, but part of a large assembly, and that you find out what's going on in the other committees, and you generally find out what's going on in the House. Right now, we're mostly concerned with our own affairs and our committees. Now, as you know, I'm on general housing and military affairs, so I brought some notes along just so that I could refresh my memory on what we're talking about. On the military side, of course, the National Guard works for the governor, and unless they are federalized, then they in turn work for the president. During that period of time, if the governor calls them out for 2 or 3 days on a state emergency, flooding, snowstorm, ice storm, they are paid their regular state guard pay. However, when they're federalized, they have to go to Iraq or to go out of state, which many still do. They're paid on a federal basis. Well, there's quite a differential between these two pays. Being on federal status, you get paid quite a bit more. So we're going to discuss, you know, the paying them if they're on duty for ice, storms, or tornadoes, the same as federal pay. We're talking about it, and I would hope that would go. I would support that. They want to increase tuition assistance for those members' children that who died in action, who died while on duty, so they can go on to school. I think the family has earned that, and if the program exists now, we just want to increase the tuition to make sure that all the kids who deserve it can go. We want to have the rehire rights for state duty. Sometimes on extended duty, a lot of people don't get rehired back at their own jobs. We'd like to assure them that they would have the same benefits as you would as a federalized soldier. When you come back, you get rehired. And then you would also have the same insurance benefits when you're on state duty as they would have if they were on federalized duty. So we're going to be talking about that. And a lot of these issues that they brought up, General Dubey was in talking to us and gave us just a great presentation on that. We did talk a little bit about the Vermont Land Trust last week and about how much land was being preserved, but we're more interested in housing and using more of our land for housing than we are for conservation at this point, because we have about 400,000 acres of land that are on conservation easements. And many of us now feel that's probably as much land as we should have under conservation, and we probably need housing. And matter of fact, that when we're talking about housing, we need 21,000 rental units. That's how many units we're short this year. There's 4,000 individuals in homeless shelters. 4,000, that's a large number. They average 12 to 25 days stay on the average. We will need another 12,300 units by 2010, 3 years away, and home ownership. And we will need 18,000 more subsidies. So we're in a housing crisis for a small state like we are. And many of the factors for creating this is that the incomes are low. We could use a lot more business in this state. We have to be business friendly, and we have to invite businesses to come in to get our incomes up. There's no housing available. The inventory is very low. We have, as you probably, if you've ever been in the housing market or hunting for homes, you find out that there is not a lot of inventory. So we have to work towards this. And one of the problems when there's no housing is a regulatory process. We, as a state, can only do two things to ease housing. We can't change the prices of brick and mortar. We can't change the prices of tar, but we can change the prices and the regulatory obstacles that are here. We can streamline our regulatory process. There'll be a lot less. You know, most people say you just can't get in the market to build houses unless you have $50,000 in your pocket. And that sort of eliminates a lot of small home builders and a lot of local people. And means that we have to sort of depend on the state and the government to do our building for us. And one reason with the regulatory purposes is NIMBYism. A lot of people just don't want affordable housing or subsidized housing and near them. So we're kind of stuck between regulations. We're stuck. How do we provide when we're not allowed to provide? Sometimes people use the regulatory process as a no-growth process, and we just have to do something. And that seems to be the two factors that are causing this housing shortage. I'm going to say it again. The regulatory process has to be streamlined. We're not saying that we're going to destroy our environment. That's not the intentions, but to make it go faster, because time is money. Sometimes your permit process is 2 to 3 years. It's very expensive. And so we've tried to, we're going to have our environmental courts tested this year, and we'll see how that's going to go. So as you can probably see right now, I could go on for a long time, but I can see everybody turning off their television sets. But that's what we've been concentrating on this week, and we'll talk to you next week about how much progress we've made. Thanks again.
Hello again from the State House. This is Toppin McFawn. A little update on what we've been doing this week in the State House and the Healthcare Committee. We're getting to the point now where we will pretty quick start developing a bill that will take care of all of the technical amendments. We also see some areas where we may have to change some policy that will all have to be in legislation. So basically, we'll be marking that bill up, I would say, starting tomorrow and going through the end of the week and probably into next week. And we'll be meeting with the Senate Health and Welfare Committee, as we did this afternoon, trying to cut down on the time it will take to get this bill introduced. So that's where we are on the Healthcare Committee. Thank you.
Hi. Well, I'm sure, as you know, this is the 4th week of the session, and this week was very, very busy. Governor Douglas did give his budget presentation to the full body. It's been covered in the papers. We've all gotten copies of the budget in detail and are now kind of going through it to see any issues we may have or to understand some of the programs that the governor outlined. I don't know if all of you know that the actual body is not meeting in the House except on Tuesdays and Fridays to give us time to spend time in committee room really doing a lot of the work until things kind of get going and bills start to be introduced. So as you know, I'm on the Education Committee, and we have once again this week really had a lot of testimony about education finance, and in particular also about governance. We also reviewed a bill this week about the statewide calendar discussion, which has been ongoing for many years, but there is a bill that's been introduced, and we're going to be taking further testimony on that. On Thursday night this week, which is the 25th, there will be a public hearing on pre-K. It starts at 6:30 here at the State House. Don't know when this is going to air, so if you have missed this notice, you really should call me if you have any interest in weighing in on the pre-K issue, because there will be a final report, and then I'm sure some discussion to follow. So that's really been the week. I think that next week we'll be hearing more testimony, but also starting to take up bills. Again, my number to contact me at home is 476-8411. You can also contact me here at the State House, but also by email, patmcdonald8411@charter.net. Thank you very much, and again, it's an honor to represent you.
Hi, folks. We're well into my 4th week here at the State House representing Orange One on the Commerce Committee. We've been listening to testimony from the Public Service Department in regards to the Verizon sale, the Public Service Board talking about different legislation that we'll be seeing coming before us, as well as listening to many folks coming in to talk about the economy in our state and jobs. And most recently, a report was released talking about basic budgets and the livable wage in Vermont. Today there was an article in the Burlington Free Press that many of you may have seen, and in attending the session, listening to the folks from Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund, some information that was handed out that I thought I'd like to share with some folks is the single parent with 1-child family livable wage is 86% of the median 2-person family income in Vermont. The 2 working parents with 2 children family livable wage is, for the first time, higher than the median 4-person family income in Vermont. So I think this is good news for us, for us folks who are looking at improving jobs with livable wages across our districts. Thank you.